Today's guest, we have Tara Wages. Now, Tara is a mom of four and she is the CEO of Connection Codes. I'm going to let her do a full introduction about herself and what we're going to talk about today. Before we jump in, I am trying to be better at this with all of my guests, but I want to know, Tara, what is one thing that you didn't sign up for?
Yes, I do. I love this question. I've been thinking about it all morning because there's so many things that I did not sign up for. And one of the things that kept coming to my mind is the judgment. The judgment actually from other women, moms and non-moms of like I've had people make comments of, "Well, you knew what you were getting into." It's like, no, I did not know what I was getting into when I had these four
Right.
babies." And so, yeah, just the judgment that I feel and the labeling of if your kids are good kids or bad kids and things like that. I did not sign up for that. And
Yeah.
it's been really, really painful.
Yeah, it's been hard for me too. And I think before I had kids, I just assumed that none of those conversations really happened. And I
Right.
was the type of parent, I do remember actually judging my brothers for letting their kids watch iPads, like when we were on trips.
Got it.
So guilty of that. And now that I'm a parent, I'm like, okay, I totally get it.
Yes.
But I feel like outside of that, I didn't really see that model to me, but I definitely felt it once I became a mom. Like from the get go, when you're before you even have kids or you're have your baby, I mean, there's questions about how are you going to deliver your baby? Are you going to do natural? Are you going to use an epidural? Are you going to do a home birth? And I feel like just from the get go, it just feels like there's a lot of judgment there because there are a lot of choices. And then, of course, you get into breastfeeding, if you're going to sleep train and all those things. And you feel like you're getting opinions from everyone, and everyone has different opinions about what you're doing. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Well, and because I did the same before when I was in my early 20s, judging, I was 100% there. It's now experiencing it from my peers and not people younger than me. Like
Hmm.
that's what's the
Okay.
most painful. It's like I've had
Yeah.
people older than me that aren't moms be like, only people that are dumb are having kids. Like the society is getting dumber because only dumb people have kids. Like someone said that to me one time. And I was like,
What?
yes. And I was like, ooh, okay. Like this is really painful. And so I think, and other moms as well. It's like, you're in the trenches
Hmm.
with me. Why are you judging my kid right now who's crying on the playground? Doesn't your kid ever cry too? So
Yeah.
it's like I expected camaraderie from women at this point, and we're just not there
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Side note, anytime I'm at the store and I see another kid throwing a tantrum, I feel bad for the parent, of course. I'm like, I've been there a million times, but it also kind of makes me feel better. I'm like, okay, it's not just my kids. It's
Yes.
this other
Yes.
person. It's not just
Yes.
me. I'm
Yeah.
normal. My kids are
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah. I had a dad one time tell me, I leave my little ones at home. Like I had to bring all of the kids to buy shoes one day and my husband was out of town and the
Yeah.
dad came over, he goes, I leave my little ones at home. And I looked at him and I just started crying. And
Of course a dad would say that, I
yeah,
feel
and I
like.
wish I could go back in time and be like, "F you, buddy. Get out of my
Right.
face. You do not have any space here." And so yeah, I didn't sign up for those kinds of comments. That's
Yeah.
something I definitely did not sign up for.
Yeah, wow. That reminds me, another side note. It reminds me of a video that went viral a little bit ago. Maybe you saw it, but it was a woman at Costco and she was judging this, mom who had, a crying child and a toddler that was just running around. And she got a lot of hate for it. And she said, leave your kids at home when you go to Costco. And it's that's not an
Yes.
option for a lot of people,
No.
and people are just doing you think that parent wants their kid misbehaving at
Right.
Costco? Hell
Yes.
no.
Yes, yes. And is that not the goal to grow society? Why are we not accepting kids in our society? That is so painful for me. We have built a culture in America where it's like kids are the outcast. They're not meant to be seen or heard. And man, it's really painful.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. I don't
Yeah.
want to waste any time because
Yes.
we met I feel like it was probably a month or so ago, and I got a lot out of our conversation.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we get into all of that. Before we get into it, do you want to do an introduction of yourself and connection codes?
Yeah, sure. Yep, my name is Tara Wages, and I am the CEO of the Connection Codes. We teach people how to identify and regulate their emotions. And I stepped into this role because I went through our founders program back in 2020, and it completely transformed my life, my marriage, how I parent, and how I show up in business as well. Emotional regulation is such as it's the core, it's the centerpiece of how we show up as humans. And these tools absolutely gave me the ability to show up as a better version of myself, but also like process those moments where I don't feel supported or I feel really lonely. I feel really shamed or fear. Like I can actually get those out of my body so I'm not drowning and overwhelmed by everything that life is throwing at me.
You had me at drowned and overwhelmed because
Yes.
I feel that a lot. And I've done a lot of therapy. Obviously, we met. And I feel like it's one of those things where I'm constantly working on it. I don't feel like I'm ever like at the goal of not feeling overwhelmed. Can we talk a little bit more about that and how identifying your emotions and how that can help with the overwhelm?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about overwhelm, we often think about like the tasks and the logistics that are involved in being overwhelmed. And so we'll make our list, but that list is never going to end. And when we actually can go through and think what's happening with me underneath it. So this morning I needed to leave the field trip. I left early. My son had a field trip and I needed to leave a few minutes early. And he was really sad about me leaving early. And I could take that sadness from him, and that could overwhelm me very quickly. Like, I'm such a bad mom. I don't show up enough for my kids, even though I was with him all morning. Like, that could overwhelm me. And just like, I have all these other tasks to do. But when I can get underneath it and be like, okay, what is happening for him? Oh, he's feeling sad. I get that, buddy. Like, I can now hold space for his sadness. I understand it. I'm not telling him, well, you shouldn't be sad. I was already here this morning, which would then create conflict for us, which would spiral the rest of the day. So, one, I can now make space for him and his emotion. But two, I can make space for me and mine. And I can just be like, I feel a lot of guilt that I have to go right now. And just recognizing that and verbalizing that to myself and to him helps my brain reconnect to itself. And so now I'm able to walk away from that situation, process it, get in my car, and move forward with my day. If I don't do that, if I don't slow down and find out what's happening, then I show up and I'm stressed out. I'm like, I just left this thing and I have this other thing, and I become a spiky person.
Yeah.
And all of those emotions create spikes, is how I view them. And then my husband comes home and now we're like cutting each other with our spikes because he had all of these things happen today as well. But we can actually verbalize it, then we can see each other in a different way and connect with each other, which connection reduces my overwhelm tremendously. If I know my son is on my team, I am on his, my husband is on my team, that alone reduces my overwhelm. My gosh, so much. Like if I showed up to this podcast feeling like a crappy mom, I would not do well. I would
Yeah.
be drowning. My brain would be somewhere else. But because I've already connected with my son, I've already connected with myself, I've already walked through how I was feeling, I can show up and know that I'm a great mom and I'm doing okay, even in
Yeah.
those harder moments.
I want to dig a little bit more into that. So, when your son was upset and feeling sad, you name the emotions, and then do you express what your emotion is too? So, you'd say, hey, buddy, like I'm feeling really guilty about having to leave early, but this is why.
Yes, I do. But he knows the language. So he's 5 and I have a 11, 9, 7, and 5-year-old. And we've been using these tools with them. So our tool, it's a 4-minute tool. It's called the Core Emotion Wheel, where you learn how to identify the emotions that are firing in your body, and then you can communicate it with those around you. So my 5-year-old, when he says sad, like he can put the word to it. And when I say guilt, he knows what that means. Because he
Hmm.
can also tell me, like, I hit somebody at school today and I feel guilt about that. Like, he can
Yeah.
communicate that with me. And so, yeah, I get down and I'm like, oh, I had so much joy being with you today. I absolutely loved going on this field trip, and I have guilt that I have to go right now. But I cannot wait to see you when you get home and hear about how the picnic went. And so he understands what I'm saying. And that doesn't take away his sadness. And when he's expressing his sadness, I'm like, yeah, buddy, I totally get that. I know it's sad that mama has to go, versus telling him not to feel something. Because as a society, we have told each other when we're little to not feel things. If he had said, I feel sad you're leaving, I'm like, well, you shouldn't feel sad because I was here. Just disregarded his experience. And I just taught him when he's feeling sad to ignore it. And once we can no longer identify what those feelings are as we grow up, well, now we're experiencing depression because we don't know what sadness feels like in our body anymore. We don't know how to get it out of our body. We have anxiety because all of these things are happening at one time inside of our bodies that we can't identify them anymore. So I want my son to know when he feels sad. Like, I want him to be like, yep, this is what sad feels like. And I want him to know I'm a safe space for him in that sad. And also, as moms, one of the things that I realized, I had lost touch with joy. Joy was actually the one that I had really left behind in the depths of having 4 kids under 5 years old. And using this tool, now I actually can identify what joy is today in a way that I couldn't before. And that's been a really beautiful part of the journey as well. Being like, oh, I had so much joy being with you today, buddy. Where typically I'd have been just moving on with things to the next task.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. And I'm thinking about my own personal experience. I've been going through, this month has kind of been hard for me, to be honest, because my mom is out of town. So I don't have my full-time childcare like I normally do. I just have part-time. And then my kids have been sick. Both kids got sick. And then I told you before we started recording, I'm starting to get a tickle in my throat. And so there's just a lot of things that are happening this month. And so I have been feeling really burned out, overwhelmed, because I have had to be watching kids while trying to work, and then work piles up. So they're back at school now, but I'm trying to play catch up now. And so I'm thinking about my own personal experience and what, on a day-to-day basis, what brings me joy. And that's kind of sad that I don't really I'm not really in the moment. I don't feel I feel like I'm just constantly going and moving and doing and going from task to task. I think often probably what people do is joy is equals going on a vacation or having a spa day or some of those things, but it's not really realistic for everyday life and finding those moments every day that make us joyful.
Well, and it's also recognizing the simple moments. I was on a coaching call. I coach women through overwhelm. And one of the calls I had this week, she was talking about when her husband finally walks in the door, she's in so much pain from her day that she doesn't even acknowledge him anymore. She doesn't even recognize him walking in the door. And I was like, whew, okay. So I was just processing with her, what all is happening for you there. And then we got to the point, it's do you feel joy when he walks in the door? She's like, well, yes, I do. And she'd even realized at this point, because she's in so much pain, that she doesn't recognize that joy. And being able to recognize no, that is a joy experience when he gets home. I can get in touch with that joy when he gets home. And being able to share that with him, well, now they're connecting with each other again versus only just drowning in the pain of the experiences. And so it's kind of dissecting these moments each day and making space for the joy. And when we're drowning in so much pain, it really is hard to slow down and feel that.
Yeah. Do you have any tips on kind of how to get started with slowing down? Because I don't know. I feel for me, it's just moving from one thing to another. So it's hard to slow down, but I want to slow down. I don't want to feel overwhelmed all the time. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I do. So our founders created the Core Emotion Wheel, and that is the 4-minute tool I mentioned a minute ago that actually teaches you how to identify the emotions. So that really is the key, because oftentimes we think we're feeling one emotion, typically anger. Anger is often comes as a secondary emotion oftentimes. So many of us were why am I so angry all of a sudden? Well, there's typically an emotion underneath that. And so being able to actually identify the correct emotion that's firing will help us to then tune into it faster. So slowing down, that part of it comes with, when do I feel tension in my body? When do I actually feel these things? And that's something that I'm starting to learn more and more, that when I feel lonely, it feels like a weight on my chest. Same with sad. Those feel like really heavy emotions. And hurt is a sharp pain. And fear is kind of a freeze for me. So when I feel my body freezing, that's when I recognize that it's fear. And so it really is tuning into your body when you are sensing a shift happen internally, either a weight or a tension, that let that be your clue. There's something happening here. And then we ask the question, what is happening? So instead of asking, why am I reacting this way? Or to our partners, like, why are you acting like this? That's a very defensive question. But when we can actually ask what's happening, it helps us invite ourselves into the experience. So, okay, what is happening for me right now? Okay, I'm feeling hurt about this comment that you made, or fear or something like that. And that's what helps us slow down. So tune into your body, notice any tension, any weight, and then ask yourself what is happening. And from there, being able to access the emotions is the next step, which your listeners, they can download the Core Emotion Wheel. I don't know if you put it in the show notes or
I can.
Link. Okay. Yeah. So they can get the free tool where they can actually relearn how to identify what those emotions feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like for myself, it's hard to, like you said, like to slow down. You're often going from like task to task. And I often like internally will just think like, oh, I feel so overwhelmed. Like there's so much going on. Like my kids are screaming, they're wanting snacks. Like I didn't get this deliverable done at work. And, I got to run them, this, to this activity or whatever. So yeah, that's really helpful in trying to identify, like slowing down, naming the emotion and like kind of recognizing and I think another thing, and I kind of got this from what you're saying, is like meeting it without judgment, instead of shaming ourselves or shaming like, oh, I'm an overwhelmed mom, I'm an overwhelmed person, like kind of sounds negative. So I like that.
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely curiosity is a core pillar of the connection codes. Getting curious about ourselves, getting curious about our kids and our partners.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk about, marriage, sex, and lack of connection, something that can happen, because this is something that I'm experiencing right now too. Because of this last month, we haven't been going on our regular date nights, because my mom is usually the one who's the babysitter, and she's been out of town for the last few weeks. And so it just feels like we don't really have that connection. I don't want to say like we're not butting heads, but we're just like almost like two ships in the night. Just go, like we know what our responsibilities are, what we need to get done every day, who's getting the kids off to school, who's picking up, who's doing dinner, like all of that. But it's like we're just going through the motions, it feels like. And so I know that's really common in relationships. So what are some of the top reasons, would you say, that couples stop connecting?
Yeah, I think that couples stop connecting. They typically look at it from a logistical standpoint of we don't have time to connect. But again, there's an emotion underneath every single thing that we do. And so when we aren't making the time to connect, then we can build up hurt from each other. We can build up loneliness in each other. And the more those emotions divide us, the less connected we will be. And so recently, Wes has been traveling. That's my husband. He's been traveling a lot. He's been gone a lot. And even for us, like as good as we are at this, we have struggled carving out that extra time to connect just because logistically he's not been physically present to do that. And so for us, he can take on guilt. Like he feels guilt because he's not home. Well, then he comes home and if he's wearing that guilt, that's spiky. Well, I don't want to connect with someone who feels spiky. Or if I've had a really intense day at work, I didn't hit a goal that I'm wanting to hit, I feel shame about that. And if I don't process that shame, now I'm coming to him spiky. So again, we were walking around our homes with our partners with all of these sharp edges. And oftentimes our sharp edges don't even have anything to do with our partner. If I've had a really hard day with the kids and Wes comes home and I'm like, I'm done, I'm overwhelmed, that's how our cycle used to be. I was spiky with him and then he would feel guilt for being gone and then he became spiky with me. Well, we're not having sex that night,
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with him and it had nothing to do with me, but we weren't able to put words to our experiences. And that's when I really knew that what Dr. Glenn and Phyllis, our founders, had created was different. Was because the first time Wes and I ever did this tool together, he shared with me sadness. I had no idea what was happening inside his body. And it wasn't that he didn't want to tell me, it's that he didn't have the words to tell me. And so being able to carve out 4 minutes each day and actually hear each other and know what shame did he feel today? What lonely did he feel today? What hurt? What joy? I'm now connected to him. Now we're on the same page. We're operating as a team. That only took 4 minutes. And now, yeah, we can add some spice on top of it because we're not operating from a place of questioning the other person. We fill in the blank a lot for our partners. Like if he comes home grumpy and I've cooked dinner, I assume, oh, he's mad at me because I cooked the wrong thing. We just fill in the blank. We don't often even get curious about each other. But these tools help us put a language to what to share in a very simple format that's easy for men, especially because men are like, I don't want to get in touch with my emotions.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to do that. But if you could do it in 2 minutes and connect with your wife, and now she's emotionally connected to you, what that does to your relationship is it transforms everything.
Yeah. So it's 4 minutes, one-on-one time with your partner. When do you recommend doing that? I think that's like a common time when people are feeling it is like when you're getting home from work and it just feels like chaos. So I feel like that's kind of like an entry point of when maybe conflict can happen.
Yeah. I do think it's different for every couple. For Wes and I, it actually tend to work better before bed. After we've put the kids down, then we can sit for 4 minutes and connect, which also typically is good for him because now I'm emotionally connected for him and the kids are in the bed. But for some people, doing it first thing in the morning is good for them. If they're like our neighbors, they wake up and have coffee with each other every single morning. That's a great time for them to carve out an extra 4 minutes to do it. And now, because we are so good at being in tune with our emotions, now I can actually access my fear. We don't have to do it every single day anymore. Now, when I get hit with fear at 3:00 in the afternoon, I can be like, whoa, bud, I'm feeling a lot of fear because the principal just called and this kid is in his office. And I feel a lot of shame about that too. I could just tell him, and now we're connected. He knows what's happening for me, and I'm not going to show up spiky with him later.
Okay. That's really helpful.
Yeah, you get to a point where you're not having to do it every single day. We do it now when we're in conflict. Like if we notice tension is coming, we had a date night 2 nights ago. It was such a bummer because we ended up in conflict, which is so rare for us. But when we pull, as soon as we can get to the wheel and we do it with each other, like now we can see, oh, you felt fear because this guy canceled on you tomorrow. If we just realized that 20 minutes earlier, we could have eliminated this entire conflict. So doing the wheel together during conflict is also really, really beneficial.
Do you have any tips or anything on maybe a partner who doesn't want to do this type of exercise or isn't bought in or doesn't want to get in tune with his emotions or her emotions?
Yeah. So Wes was very much that way early on. And so I implemented it for myself. I would process and I would still share with him when I was feeling guilt or when I was feeling something. And I would implement it with our kids. And it was actually him seeing the shift in the kids that made him get more on board with doing it with me. Also the shift in our sex life that got him more on board of being willing to do it with me as well, because it's changed our sex life tremendously from what it was like before we started getting more emotionally connected to what it is today.
Okay. That's helpful. Yes. I do have the wheel on my fridge, but I just haven't been the best with my kids and showing it to them. I think it got buried underneath some artwork. But I definitely need to bring that out too, because it's so easy as a parent, and as a partner, I mean, to take out your anger on those. It's not their fault. It's not your partner's fault. If you had a bad day at work, like you said, or you're overwhelmed with the kids, it's not your kid's fault, but it's very easy to kind of lash out at the people that are closest to you, even though it's not their fault. And I know for me as a parent, like I really want to teach my kids emotional intelligence where they can identify their emotions. But it's also really hard as a parent when you don't feel like you have those tools yourself to learn them and then also try to emotionally regulate your children as well.
Yes. No, it is really difficult. And I would say one more thing about that is asking your partner, like, hey, I'd feel a lot of joy if you would do this with me. Like actually let them know like, hey, I would feel really connected. It would bring me joy. Can we just spend 4 minutes to do this? And let them know like, this is only going to take a few minutes to actually implement it together. And that can get them on board faster. And with the kids, yes, I had a kid that had been previously diagnosed with an anxiety disorder at the age of like 6, which was terrifying. And through learning how to process and regulate their emotions, like they've asked me if they could do a testimonial video for me because it's changed their life so much. Yes. And I haven't let them because I obviously want to protect them and their story,
Right. Yeah.
But it has helped them put the words to what they're experiencing in a really powerful and beautiful way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. And I'm just thinking through what type of routine like I can implement where I can be consistent with this. And I'm thinking like even dinner time, is that something that you would recommend is like couples doing it together with their kids, maybe at the dinner table?
Yeah. As long as you don't have too many kids.
Yeah.
A really big family. And so when Wes is traveling, I tend to do it at dinner with the kids, and we are all pretty patient with each other. It's harder for Wes when he's here. He's not as patient about it because the kids can take it longer. Like they're not as fast. So we also like to do it at bedtime with them individually because they tend to be more open, more willing to be vulnerable. And I just hold space for them. When I share what I'm feeling with them, I don't tell them everything they did wrong. Like I let my anger typically be about, I felt angry because this guy cut me off in the street today. I don't make it like I felt angry because you were a little twerp all day to me. So I may share like 1 or 2 things. Like I felt hurt when you told me that you didn't love me anymore. Like I may say something like that, but I make sure that my emotions aren't their problem, but they also know I get to experience emotions too. And the goal in those moments with them is just for them to learn how to access and identify emotions. Like I'm using it to teach them, not for them to be my therapist. So that's my only caveat with kids doing it there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, good reminder, like not to put your emotions like on your kids in that way. Yeah,
but it's important they know we have them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're human too. Yeah. Okay, I want to ask a couple more questions about like connecting with your partner like after having kids. Like, are there any additional ways that you recommend for couples to connect after having children?
Yeah. I know I reached out to you after your post about date nights because you had some people come back and, everyone's experience is different, but I would say prioritizing your relationship and setting aside time for your marriage is imperative. And I know that it's difficult. I know that it's financially hard for a lot of families, but I do think that there are creative ways in which you could do it. And like I have someone in my life where I'm like, bring your kid to my house. Like, let me watch them. They haven't been on a date in like 3 or 4 years. And they're like, oh no, they won't do it. Like this kid knows me well. And I'm just like, I just wish I could shake the mom and be like, what is happening for you? Let this kid go. Like it can be at my house for 2 hours so you can go out with your husband. And we just lose each other, I think, because we're no longer prioritizing our partner anymore. And I see a lot of value in making sure they still feel seen and they still feel connected to us. And that's why I love this tool, because it's a quick win where then you can go out together and actually enjoy your time, have a good experience because you were connected before you even left the house.
Yeah. When I posted about date night, I got a lot of responses and I did like Instagram polls, and I can't remember the percentage, but I think it was like 78% of people said that they hadn't gone on a date in at least 6 months or more. Mm-hmm. And then the number of DMs that I got where people were like, 6 months, like what about never? Or what about 4 years? Or since my son was born, we haven't been on a date and he's 5. I got a lot of responses like that. And I was blown away. Like I knew it was a problem, but I didn't really understand like it was that big of an issue. And then I dug in more on why don't you go on date nights? I think that there's a lot of obstacles for parents. You don't have a village. A lot of people don't live close to family, or they don't have family that is able to watch their children. People feel guilty. I know for myself too. I would feel guilty asking my neighbors to watch my kids so I can go on a date. I don't know why that is. I feel like I would be inconveniencing them. Like no one wants to watch extra kids. So I think that there's like all of these obstacles that just prevent people from doing it. Sometimes it feels easier to not prioritize your relationship. But I also know from personal experience, like that can really damage a relationship, and you want it to get to the point where you don't feel connected to your partner. Maybe, you are contemplating divorce or other things like that.
Yeah, and people tend to wait until it's too late. Like
Yeah.
we live in relationships and we are struggling, for years and having a hard time and not feeling seen and not feeling connected. And then we break and then we'll get the help instead of like being proactive about staying connected along the way. And I agree. It is funny that neighbors don't do that, where the kids are at my house every day. I have anywhere from 7 to 9 kids at my house every single afternoon. I'm the neighborhood house. And so for me, I'm like, of course, bring your kid over. They're going to be here anyway. Y'all just leave and go somewhere so you can enjoy your time. Yeah. And I would love if somebody offered to swap with me. I'm like, yeah, free date night. Like, I'll watch your kids one night for you to have a free date night and we can trade. I think things like that are brilliant and that parents aren't taking advantage of it with each other. And I think it's really sad because I thought there was a village mentality. That's what we were always told, if it takes a village. And that's how society was originally created. Families just lived together. They all took care of each other's, like that's how they survived, by just taking care of each other. And now we're so isolated. It's like, nope, this is my crew over here. That's your crew over there. And I will wave to you from my driveway. And that's really painful.
Yeah. Well, and it's really hard too, because I'm just thinking about my own childhood. I'm the youngest or number 5 of 6. So I'm on the younger end. Yeah. So when I was little, my older brothers were old enough to babysit me. So that was like my parents' childcare. Because I remember my parents went out on date night all the time and they went on trips and things like that. But they had older kids. And I think when my older brothers were young, I'm pretty sure they just asked, like they had friends in the neighborhood, like in their church and community, and they would just do the same thing, like swap. And so I don't know, it's hard for me to understand now why we feel so insecure and guilty that like we're inconveniencing people. And I know I feel that way myself. So it's like, why do I feel that way when maybe it wasn't that way 20 to 30 years ago? So this is your sign to go and just ask your neighbor if you can do a swap.
Yes.
You'll watch their kids one date night and then they'll watch yours another. Just go and do it and see what happens.
I totally agree with that. Yes. My issue is I have so many kids. I have twice as many kids as anyone else in our neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's work out as well for me. But yeah, I genuinely would have joy in watching my neighbors' kids. Like, it would bring me joy to know, come over for 3 hours. We'll have a movie night. We'll have popcorn. Like, we'll do a thing. I'm going to be here anyway with 4 kids. What's 2 more? Like, it's not that big of a deal. And so, well,
and I feel like for my kids are 4 and 6. I feel like they actually do better when they have friends or cousins over at the house, because then they're not bugging me to entertain them or asking me for a million things. Like, they just kind of go in the basement and do their thing, and I can be upstairs, work, clean, scroll my phone, whatever I need to. So it's actually kind of easier as a parent with the ages that my kids are at right now.
Yeah.
We already did kind of talk about the core emotions wheel, but remind me, it is just kind of your basic emotions, and then does it go any deeper than that on the emotions wheel?
Nope, it's the 8 core emotions, and I wouldn't mind 8 core doing emotions. It if you would.
Yeah,
I don't mind doing it at all.
Yeah,
I don't know if you would want to do it though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Open book.
All right. So let's do this. I will go first so you can kind of see what it looks like. And so these are the 8 core emotions. And as you hear them, you may think, why are there so many negative emotions on here? Emotions are not good or bad. They just are. They are our messengers. And it is what we do with them that matters. I don't want to drown in fear. I don't want fear to hold me back from walking out of my house, but fear is what keeps me safe. Fear is what keeps me from spending all of my money, designer handbags, like fear is not a bad thing when we keep it in check. And so that is what using these tools actually helps you do, is to keep it in check so you're not so overwhelmed in it. So I will start. I felt anger. This morning. I immediately opened social media and there was politician talking about people aren't having kids because of car seats. And I felt a lot of anger.
I saw that
about that. I felt a lot of anger because I was like, that actually has nothing to do with it. Can we please talk about the guns? So yeah, I immediately experienced anger. I felt shame. Walking into my kids' field trip today because he is a little bit more of the troublemaker out of my 4 kids. And yesterday he got in trouble for pulling a girl's hair, and I don't know which girl's hair. And so I walk in with shame, not knowing which moms hate me and which ones don't. So I felt shame. I felt guilt for needing to leave the field trip early. I have fear. What fear am I experiencing right now? I have fear because I am currently working on some back end stuff in the business, and that I'm not going to get it done by the deadline, which is Monday. And so I have fear that I'm going to miss on that. I feel lonely. I feel lonely in work, but I'm the one managing a lot of things. And so I feel a lot of loneliness and just getting the logistical tasks done. I feel sad. Felt sad this week. What was my sad? Sad is a heavy weight. I'm tired. I had a kid with a stomach bug on Monday, and I felt sadness in my body. Sadness is like there's something missing, and sleep was missing from me. And so that was sad. I felt hurt. I felt hurt the other night because my husband was hit with fear and he didn't process it, and he ended up using his words, and it hurt me. I felt hurt by him. And I feel joy. I feel joy in getting to go on the field trip today. I feel joy in getting to be with you, Caitlin, and getting to know your community, sharing these tools.
Okay. I'm probably going to stumble over most of these.
Okay. Do you have it pulled up, or do you want me to show you?
I have it pulled up.
Okay.
Okay. I think this will be a good exercise because then you can kind of coach me through. Is it just by day, or is it just any time in the week last week?
That's a great question. So the goal is to say a recent time you felt it. If you can't think of a recent time, think of a big time, even if it was 10, 20 years ago. And if you can't think of a big time, you can make something up. Because when you're doing this exercise, the goal is for you just to train your brain what guilt feels like. That way, when you feel guilt at 3:00 on a Tuesday afternoon, you know, oh, that's what that is. So this process is just to train your brain.
Okay. I felt anger when my 4-year-old was struggling with bedtime and kept coming out of her room. I don't know. I lost count of how many times, 6, 7 times, didn't go to bed until after 11 p.m. And I got to the point where I was feeling very, very angry and ragey.
Yeah, get that.
I felt shame I took my daughter to school, and she had spilled something on her shirt. And we were already in the car and we were late, and I felt a lot of shame knowing that she was going to go to school with a dirty shirt.
Yeah.
And also guilt. I guess that also is like a little bit of guilt too, that, you know, that maybe she'll be teased, and that kind of makes me feel guilty that like it's my fault if she does get teased or people notice that. Also felt guilt. Let's see. When else did I feel guilt? I felt guilt, a lot in the last couple of weeks when my kids were watching a lot of screen time and lots of tablet time because they were sick, and I had things I had to do for work, and I couldn't entertain them or do fun activities.
Yeah, get that.
Felt fear when I was driving the other day, and I got a notification on my car that like I had hit something. And I had fear because I was like right at a crosswalk. I had fear that I hit a child or a dog or something. And so I parked my car. I got out of my car. Nothing was there. I don't know what had happened. I don't know. But I had a lot of fear in that moment that like something bad had happened. Lonely. I felt lonely. Just this last couple of weeks, Cody's been working really long hours. So he's been leaving around like 8 a.m. and not getting home till 6:30. And we've had kid activities in the evening. So I usually don't get back with them till 7:30. And so we just haven't been connecting. So it's kind of made me feel a little lonely. I felt sad. Oh, sad. Let's see. I know I felt sadness. I think sadness is like what you said, just being really tired. I've just been feeling a lot of exhaustion lately. So I think does that play into sadness?
Yeah. Sadness is there something missing or damaged?
Okay. So, definitely missing energy because I've been going to sleep very early. I've just like completely wiped. Hurt. Hurt. Might be silly. I guess I probably shouldn't say that because it's my emotions. Just hurt by some of the, some people's rhetoric and comments about, some feedback that I had, or like my opinion about the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So I was a little hurt by some people close to me had mentioned about some of my commentary around that. That was hurtful. Joy. The leaves are changing here in Utah, and I have these big, beautiful mountains in my backyard, and I can see from afar all the red and the orange, and we're going up this weekend to go check them out. It's going to be beautiful weather. And so that brings me a lot of joy, just looking at the mountains and just enjoying fall.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing. These words, these are our 8 core emotions. And so when you actually say sad, I know what sad feels like. Or when you say shame or joy, my body knows what they feel like. So even as you say joy, I'm lighting up. Like I have joy in hearing your joy. It's connecting between the two of us because my body knows these words. Versus if you say overwhelmed or upset or anxiety, those hit different because mine looks different than yours. My overwhelm or my anxiety looks different. So it's not as connecting to each other.
I see. Okay.
And so that is why these get to the very basics of the emotions. That's why I love Inside Out too. Like these are the core ones that are when they're in charge of the console, things can calm down. Like we still need anger. Like I love when that little guy fires off. We need all of these emotions, but when we can't access them anymore, that's when those more complex emotions take over. And so even like picturing, hearing what Cody would say in doing that, or picturing hearing like what your daughter would say when she felt loneliness today. I would much rather hear when my 7-year-old felt loneliness today than who he sat by next at lunch. Our kids walk in the door, we're like, how was school? Fine. Well, what happened? Well, I sat by so-and-so, or, I did this worksheet. Versus my kids tell me I felt fear in this moment. I felt guilt in this moment. I actually know what's happening with them in a much, much deeper way. And that is like, it just gets me fired up about it. I can't talk about it enough. How powerful it is. Yeah.
Well, I even feel a lot calmer now going through that exercise because I usually am just like a little bit more of an anxious person. And I feel a lot calmer and actually more connected to you. No. Okay, I'm sold. I'm going to do it with my girls tonight. I'm curious what they're going to say. And then I also and I want to point this out. I think I remember you mentioning this in our meeting before. But when the other person is speaking and expressing their emotions, it's not time for you to respond, right? Yes. You just let them speak until they're done.
Yes, that is very, very important because that's how we create safety. And so when we're sharing, we call it the ooh, which a lot of people feel uncomfortable with that phrase. I don't necessarily ooh someone, but I'm like, yeah, okay, wow. So it is an audible response. So the other person knows I am listening to you right now. Like you haven't just checked out. You haven't left the room mentally. So we do give like those little responses, but it teaches us how to just hold space for each other. So you can share without feeling like I'm going to try to fix you or defend against anything. I used to be extremely defensive. And now Wes can share like, I felt hurt because I made a move on you last night and you ignored my advance. Like you didn't have sex with me when I thought that we were going to have sex. And now I can just be like, yeah, I can see why that would feel hurtful to you. Like I understand now what his hurt looks like, and also that he's a person and he can experience hurt. And that doesn't mean I have to have sex with him just because he's going to feel hurt. I can just hold space for that hurt and not defend myself, not be like, well, I was up all night the night before with the kids and this and this and this. No, like he gets to feel hurt and that's okay. But I can also, when it's my turn, process like, yeah, I was feeling a lot of sadness because I was exhausted today. Like we can now communicate it in a much different and more connecting way.
Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to try.
Yes.
Perfect. Where can people find out more information about connection codes?
Yeah. So we'll definitely link the tool in the show notes. And I'm so glad that you did it with me and you could like feel the shift in your body because it really is a shift in your body. So I encourage everyone to download it through the show notes. I would definitely start there. But of course, connectioncodes.co is our website, and on Instagram, Connection Codes is our tool. We have master classes that teach couples how to communicate with each other. We have a late night sex class. Our founder is a
Ooh.
clinical sexologist. And so like when I say that we help people get things spicy over here, like we are all about building connection emotionally. You can, like, his mission, honestly, was to help couples build emotional connection so they can have great sex. Like, he cares much more about having great sex lives than anything. And so, yeah, we have a parenting course. We just want to help people really get in touch with themselves and get curious about each other so we can show up in a world where we hold space for each other and where we can see each other and we're not disregarding each other's experiences.
Awesome. And then you have a podcast too, don't you?
Oh, that's so true. Thank you, Caitlin. We do have a podcast.
I was listening to it in preparation for this.
Yes. Our podcast is The Connection Codes, and we talk all about these tools and the science behind connection and the science behind the different emotions, how they show up in our bodies. We talk a lot about psychological disorders. Our founder also experiences different psychological disorders, and so he shares vulnerably about his experiences as well. Talk a lot about sex. Like, it is a great podcast. I highly encourage you to listen.
Awesome. And I'll link it in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Tara, for joining us today.
Thank you so much.